I want to tell you a little bit about the summer, or at least something that I was noticing this summer. Of course, the summer we enjoyed the Olympics, and I love the Olympics. It's one of the few times in our household that the television is on almost all the time because we're watching the Olympics all the time. And I love the Olympics basically from beginning to end. And I loved the opening ceremonies. I missed the very controversial part of it, so it wasn't spoiled for me, but just the whole backdrop of the city, and it was thrillingly done, I thought, it was stirring, and I loved that. But then the end came, and the closing ceremonies, and we were home back in Pittsburgh, and Tamara was watching some of the closing ceremonies, and I was avoiding watching the closing ceremonies because I was just sad that they were over. I hate the closing ceremonies because I hate the end. And I think that's true for many of us, is we don't like ends. We don't like saying goodbye. We don't like good things to be over. In that sense, we struggle often with the reality of transitions in our lives, and I know there certainly in our diocese there are a number of congregations that are in little pastoral transitions where something has ended, something new is happening, but something is ending, or they're anticipating a pastoral transition, knowing that something is and nobody is feeling great about ends. Nobody wants to ultimately say goodbye. People at this time of year, particularly as kids go back to college, or there are shifts and changes, there are transitions in our lives all over the place, and there's a sense in which, at least for me, I really on some level want to avoid the saying goodbye. And I wanted to avoid the closing ceremonies because I didn't want to say goodbye. But what happened is Tamara was watching them and she was making these comments, and I got kind of sucked in and started watching it, and I got involved. And of course the Paris Olympics came to an end, and then at the end there was a passing of the flag, there was a passing of the torch, and of course it was again kind of wildly and spectacularly done, and Tom Cruise and sort of jumping into the stadium, and very Mission Impossible and all that sort of stuff. It was a spectacle. But in that transition and the end and in the change, there was this pointing forward to what's next, which I thought was really good. And it's a very gospel thing, isn't it? Jesus in Revelation says, at the end of all things, at the end where we're wanting, at the end of all things, Jesus is saying, and it says this, and he who is seated on the throne said, behold, I am making all things new. In the end of all things, there is in the gospel and the promise of the gospel, the promise of Jesus, this making of things new again. Goodbyes, changes, transitions are hard. I don't love them. Nobody loves them. But even in the ending and the closing, Jesus promises that he is making all things new. So I don't know what transitions you're facing in your life. I don't know what goodbyes you don't want to say. There are many of them that might be true. But the promise of the gospel, what Jesus says to us is, behold, I am making all things new. Even in the things that are going away, he is recreating life for us. So in our sadness, there is this pointing to what Jesus is continuing to do. So as you are facing transitions, whatever they are, whatever goodbyes, whatever shifts are happening in your life, hear the words of Jesus, behold, I am making all things new.